The rain had been falling steadily for hours, turning the evening commute into a crawling nightmare of red brake lights and frustrated drivers. Officer Michael Rodriguez was finishing his shift patrol when he noticed the blue sedan weaving erratically through traffic on Highway 101. The car was moving fast, too fast for the wet conditions, cutting between lanes with reckless abandon. Michael flipped on his emergency lights and hit the siren. The familiar weight of duty settled on his shoulders as he accelerated to catch up with the vehicle. He'd been a traffic officer for 8 years, and he'd seen every excuse in the book. Late for work, sick relative, emergency bathroom break. He'd heard them all, and tonight felt like just another routine traffic stop. The sedan finally pulled over onto the shoulder, hazard lights blinking weakly in the gathering dusk. Michael parked behind it, ran his hand through his graying hair, and stepped out into the rain. Water immediately soaked through his uniform shirt as he approached the driver's side window. "Ma'am, do you know why I pulled you over tonight?" he began, his voice carrying the practiced authority of thousands of similar interactions. But when the window rolled down, the words died in his throat. The woman behind the wheel was young, maybe 25, with dark hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. Her face was pale, almost ghostly in the streetlight, and her hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had gone white. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. They were wide with panic, filled with a terror that had nothing to do with getting a speeding ticket. "I'm sorry, officer," she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I was speeding, but I think the baby's coming." Michael's training kicked in immediately. He'd assisted in 2 births during his career, both times while waiting for paramedics to arrive. He quickly scanned the interior of the car, noting the towels spread across the passenger seat, the overnight bag in the back, and most telling of all, the wet stains spreading across the driver's seat. "Okay, ma'am, what's your name?" he asked, his voice gentling completely. "Sarah," she panted. "Sarah Martinez. I was driving to Memorial Hospital, but the contractions started getting closer together, and I got scared, and I just wanted to get there as fast as possible." Michael could see she was alone. No wedding ring, no passenger, no phone visible anywhere in the car. Just a frightened young woman facing the most intense experience of her life without any support. "Sarah, I'm Officer Rodriguez, but you can call me Mike. How far apart are your contractions?" She looked at him with grateful eyes, as if his calm presence had thrown her a lifeline. Maybe 3 minutes? They're getting stronger." Michael made a quick decision. Memorial Hospital was still 15 minutes away in good traffic, and in this weather, with evening rush hour still clogging the roads, it could take twice that long. He couldn't risk waiting for an ambulance either, not when every minute counted. "Sarah, I want you to move to the passenger seat. I'm going to drive you to the hospital myself." But what about my car?" "We'll worry about that later. Right now, you and your baby are what matter." Sarah nodded, and with Michael's help, she carefully moved to the passenger side. He could see the pain etched on her face with each movement, the way she had to stop and breathe through another contraction. Once she was settled, Michael slid behind the wheel, adjusted the seat, and immediately called dispatch. "This is Rodriguez. Badge number 4427. I have a female in active labor, approximately 25 years old. I'm transporting her to Memorial Hospital myself. ETA approximately 15 minutes. Copy that, Rodriguez. We'll notify the hospital you're en route. Michael pulled back onto the highway, using his lights and siren to cut through the traffic. Sarah was breathing heavily beside him, her hands pressed against her swollen belly. "Tell me about the baby," Michael said, partly to distract her and partly because he genuinely wanted to know. "Is this your first?" Sarah nodded, tears mixing with the sweat on her cheeks. "Yes, I wasn't supposed to be alone. The father, he left when he found out. Said he wasn't ready to be a dad." Michael felt a familiar anger rise in his chest. He'd seen too many women abandoned during pregnancy, left to face the most challenging time of their lives without support. But he pushed the anger aside. Sarah needed his calm strength now, not his judgment of someone who wasn't even here. "Well, you're not alone now," he said firmly. "And you're going to be an amazing mother. I can tell." "How can you tell?" Sarah asked, managing a weak smile through her pain. "Because you're fighting like hell to get your baby safely into this world. That's what mothers do." They drove in companionable silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the rhythmic thrum of rain on the windshield and Sarah's carefully controlled breathing. Michael found himself thinking about his own children, grown now and living in different states. He remembered the terror and excitement of rushing to the hospital when his wife went into labor with their first child, the way time seemed to slow down and speed up simultaneously. "Mike?" Sarah's voice cut through his memories. "Yeah? I'm scared. What if something goes wrong? What if I can't do this?" Michael glanced over at her, seeing the vulnerable young woman beneath the brave facade. "Sarah, women have been having babies for thousands of years. Your body knows what to do. And if anything goes wrong, which it won't, we'll be at the hospital in just a few more minutes." "But what if—" Sarah's words were cut off by a sharp gasp. Her entire body went rigid, and she gripped the door handle with white knuckles. "That was a big one," she panted when it passed. Michael checked his watch. Less than 2 minutes since the last contraction. They were definitely getting closer together. "We're almost there, Sarah. Just hold on a little longer." But even as he said it, Michael could feel the situation changing. There was an urgency in the air now, a sense that nature was taking over and wouldn't be denied. He pressed a little harder on the accelerator, the speedometer climbing as they raced through the rain-slicked streets. "Mike, I need to push," Sarah said suddenly, her voice tight with panic. "No, not yet. We're still 5 minutes out. Just breathe with me, okay? In through your nose, out through your mouth." He demonstrated the breathing technique, and Sarah tried to follow along, but he could see her losing the battle against her body's natural instincts. I can't hold it back anymore," she gasped. Michael's mind raced. They were still too far from the hospital, and there was no safe place to pull over on this stretch of highway. But then he saw the exit sign for Riverside Drive, and he remembered the small park there with the covered pavilion. It would have to do. "Sarah, I'm going to pull over. The baby's coming now, and we need to be somewhere safe." He took the exit and drove quickly to the park, pulling up next to the pavilion. The rain was coming down harder now, but the covered area would provide some shelter. Michael shut off the engine and turned to Sarah. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to help you into the back seat, and then I'm going to help you deliver your baby." Sarah's eyes were wide with terror, but she nodded. "You've done this before?" "Twice," Michael said, with more confidence than he felt. "Trust me." With careful movements, they got Sarah positioned in the back seat. Michael retrieved the towels from the front and spread them around her. His hands were steady as he worked, drawing on his training and experience. But inside, his heart was racing. "I can see the head," he announced, his voice filled with wonder despite the circumstances. "Sarah, your baby's almost here." The next few minutes passed in a blur of coaching and encouragement. Michael found himself amazed by Sarah's strength and determination. She was just a young woman, barely more than a girl herself, but she was facing this challenge with incredible courage. "One more push, Sarah. Give me everything you've got." With a final tremendous effort, Sarah pushed, and suddenly, Michael was holding a tiny, perfect human being. The baby was silent for a heart-stopping moment, then let out a strong, healthy cry that filled the car and seemed to echo off the pavilion walls. "It's a boy," Michael announced, his voice thick with emotion. "Sarah, you have a son." Sarah was crying now, tears of relief and joy streaming down her face as Michael carefully placed the baby on her chest. The little boy was red and wrinkled and absolutely beautiful, his tiny fist waving in the air as he announced his arrival to the world. "He's perfect," Sarah whispered, her voice full of awe. "He's absolutely perfect." Michael used his radio to call for an ambulance, though the emergency was over now. The paramedics would need to check both mother and baby, cut the umbilical cord properly, and transport them to the hospital for a thorough examination. But the immediate crisis had passed. As they waited for the ambulance, Michael found himself watching Sarah and her son with a mixture of professional satisfaction and personal emotion. There was something about witnessing a birth, about being present for that miraculous moment when a new life entered the world, that never failed to move him. "What are you going to name him?" Michael asked. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes still bright with tears. "I was thinking about naming him after his father, but—" She paused, looking down at her son, then back at Michael. "I think I want to name him after the man who was actually here when he needed him most." Michael felt his throat tighten. "Sarah, you don't have to—" "What's your full name?" "Michael James Rodriguez." "Michael James Martinez," Sarah said, trying it out. "That has a nice ring to it." The ambulance arrived then, sirens wailing and lights flashing. The paramedics took over with professional efficiency, checking vital signs and preparing Sarah and baby Michael for transport to the hospital. Michael watched them work, feeling a strange mix of pride and melancholy. At the hospital, there was the usual flurry of activity: forms to fill out, statements to give, congratulations from the medical staff. Someone from the local news station showed up, wanting to do a story about the heroic police officer who delivered a baby in a thunderstorm. Michael declined the interview, as he always did. This wasn't about him being a hero. This was about being in the right place at the right time and doing what needed to be done. Later, after the paperwork was finished and the excitement had died down, Michael found himself standing outside Sarah's hospital room. Through the window, he could see her holding little Michael, both of them looking peaceful and content. A nurse approached him. "She's been asking for you," the nurse said. "She wants to thank you." Michael walked into the room quietly, not wanting to disturb the peaceful scene. Sarah looked up when she heard his footsteps, and her face broke into a radiant smile. "Mike, I'm so glad you're here. I wanted to thank you for everything you did tonight. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there." Michael pulled up a chair beside her bed. "You would have been fine, Sarah. You're stronger than you know." "I don't feel very strong right now," she said, with a laugh. "I feel like I got hit by a truck." "That's normal. You just did something incredible." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the baby sleep. Michael found himself thinking about his own children again, about the circle of life, and the way moments like this reminded him why he'd chosen to become a police officer in the first place. It wasn't about the authority or the excitement. It was about helping people, about being there when they needed someone most. "Mike, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you have children?" Michael nodded. "Two, a son and a daughter. They're both grown now, living their own lives." "Do you miss them?" "Every day," Michael said honestly. "But that's what parents do. We raise them to be independent, to make their own way in the world. And then we spend the rest of our lives missing them." Sarah looked down at her son, who was beginning to stir in her arms. "I can't imagine ever wanting to let him go." "You won't want to," Michael said, "but someday you'll have to. And when that day comes, you'll do it because you love him." Over the next few days, Michael found himself thinking about Sarah and baby Michael more than he probably should have. He stopped by the hospital once to check on them, bringing a small teddy bear he'd picked up at the gift shop. Sarah was doing well, learning to breastfeed and getting used to the constant demands of a newborn. The baby was healthy and strong, already showing signs of the fighting spirit he'd inherited from his mother. "Any word from the father?" Michael asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Sarah shook her head. "I sent him a text with a picture, but he hasn't responded. I think it's probably better this way. Michael and I were going to be just fine on our own." Michael admired her strength and determination, but he also worried about her. Raising a child alone was incredibly difficult, even under the best circumstances. But Sarah had family support, he learned. Her parents lived nearby and were thrilled to be grandparents. Her sister had moved in with her temporarily to help with the baby. She wouldn't be facing this challenge entirely alone. A week later, Michael was back on patrol when he got a call to respond to a minor traffic accident. Nothing serious, just a fender bender that needed a report filed. As he was taking his statements from the drivers involved, he noticed a familiar blue sedan parked across the street. Sarah was sitting in the driver's seat, and he could see the baby carrier in the back. When he finished with the accident report, he walked over to her car. Sarah rolled down the window with a smile. "Hey, Officer Rodriguez. Fancy meeting you here." "How are you doing, Sarah? How's little Michael?" "We're doing great," she said, and Michael could see that she meant it. There was a confidence in her voice that hadn't been there that rainy night a week ago. "He's a good baby. Sleeps pretty well. Eats like a champ. The doctor says he's perfect." "And you? Are you taking care of yourself too?" "I'm trying to. My mom has been amazing, and my sister is helping out. It's an adjustment, but we're figuring it out." Michael felt a warm glow of satisfaction. This was why he did this job, not for the car chases or the adrenaline rushes, but for moments like this, for the knowledge that he'd made a difference in someone's life when they needed it most. "I'm glad to hear that," he said, "and if you ever need anything at all, you have my number." Sarah reached out and squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Mike, for everything. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it. You changed our lives that night." "You changed mine too," Michael said, surprised by his own admission. As he drove away, Michael found himself thinking about the unexpected ways life could intersect. how a routine traffic stop could become something so much more significant. How a scared young woman and a veteran police officer could find themselves connected by a moment of crisis and grace. That night, when he got home to his quiet apartment, Michael called his own children. His son in Denver, his daughter in Seattle. He told them about Sarah and baby Michael, about the night he helped deliver a baby in a thunderstorm. His children listened with interest and pride, and for the first time in months, Michael felt truly connected to them across the miles. "Dad, that's amazing," his daughter said. "You're like a real-life hero." "I'm not a hero," Michael protested. "I just did what needed to be done." "That's what heroes do, Dad. They do what needs to be done when nobody else can." After he hung up, Michael sat in his recliner and thought about heroism. He'd never considered himself heroic. He was just a cop doing his job, trying to make it through each shift and help a few people along the way. But maybe that was enough. Maybe heroism wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic rescues. Maybe it was about showing up when someone needed you most, about being calm in the storm, about offering strength when someone else was at their weakest. 6 months later, Michael received an invitation in the mail. It was to baby Michael's baptism, and inside was a note from Sarah. "Dear Mike, I wanted you to be there when we celebrate Michael's baptism. You were there for his birth, and it seems right that you should be there for this milestone too. I hope you can make it. Love, Sarah and Michael." Michael marked the date on his calendar and went shopping for an appropriate gift. He found a small silver frame and had it engraved with the baby's name and birth date. It seemed fitting somehow, a way to commemorate the night that had changed all their lives. The baptism was held at a small Catholic church in Sarah's neighborhood. Michael arrived early, feeling oddly nervous about seeing Sarah and the baby again. But when Sarah spotted him in the church, her face lit up with genuine joy. "Mike, you came!" She approached him with baby Michael in her arms, and Michael was amazed at how much the little boy had grown. He was alert and curious, his dark eyes taking in everything around him. "He's getting big," Michael observed, reaching out to touch the baby's tiny hand. Little Michael immediately grasped his finger with surprising strength. "He's 6 months old now," Sarah said proudly, rolling over, sitting up with support, eating solid foods. "He's hitting all his milestones." Michael looked at Sarah and was struck by how much she'd changed, too. The frightened young woman from that rainy night had been replaced by a confident mother. There was a glow about her, a sense of purpose and joy that was beautiful to see. "You look happy," he said. "I am happy. Being a mom is the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also the most rewarding. Every day he does something new, something amazing. Yesterday he laughed for the first time. Really laughed, not just a little giggle. It was the most beautiful sound I've ever heard." The baptism ceremony was simple but moving. Michael sat in the back, watching as Sarah and her family gathered around the font. When the priest poured the water over baby Michael's head, the little boy didn't cry. Instead, he looked around with wide, curious eyes, as if he was taking in this new experience with the same courage his mother had shown on the night he was born. After the ceremony, there was a small reception at Sarah's parents' house. Michael met her family, warm and welcoming people who embraced him as if he were one of their own. Sarah's father, a mechanic with calloused hands and kind eyes, pulled him aside. "I want to thank you for what you did for my daughter and grandson," he said. Sarah told us the whole story. You were an angel that night. I was just doing my job, Michael replied, but Sarah's father shook his head. No, you went above and beyond. You gave her courage when she needed it most. That's not part of any job description. As the afternoon wound down, Michael found himself on the back porch with Sarah and baby Michael. The little boy was fussing a bit, tired from all the excitement, and Sarah was gently bouncing him on her knee. "Can I hold him?" Michael asked. "Of course." Michael took the baby carefully, marveling at how light and fragile he felt. But baby Michael settled immediately, looking up at Michael with those same dark eyes that had captured his heart 6 months ago. "He remembers you," Sarah said softly. "I swear he does." Michael didn't believe in such things, but there was something about the way the baby looked at him, a recognition that seemed to go beyond coincidence. He found himself humming softly, an old lullaby his mother had sung to him years ago. "You're going to be a good man, aren't you, Michael?" he whispered to the baby. "You're going to take care of your mama and make her proud." The baby gurgled and reached up to touch Michael's face with his tiny fingers. "I think that's a yes," Sarah said with a laugh. As Michael prepared to leave, Sarah walked him to his car. "Mike, I want you to know something. I've been thinking about that night a lot, and I realized that you didn't just help me deliver a baby, you helped me become a mother. You showed me that I was strong enough to handle whatever came my way. That gift, that confidence you gave me, it's something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life." Michael felt his eyes misting up. "Sarah, you already had that strength. I just helped you find it. Maybe, but I want you to know that you'll always be part of our family. Always. And someday, when Michael is old enough to understand, I'm going to tell him about the police officer who helped bring him into the world. I'm going to tell him about the man who showed his mother what real courage looks like." As Michael drove home that evening, he reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought him to this point. A routine traffic stop had become something much more significant, a reminder of why he'd chosen to dedicate his life to serving others. In helping Sarah and baby Michael, he'd rediscovered his own sense of purpose, his own capacity for compassion and connection. The rain had stopped falling that night 6 months ago, but the ripples from that moment continued to spread outward, touching lives in ways that none of them could have anticipated. Michael knew that he would carry Sarah and baby Michael in his heart for the rest of his life, just as they would carry him in theirs. And in a world that often seemed dark and divided, that connection, that shared humanity, felt like a small miracle worth celebrating. Years later, when Michael retired from the police force, he received a card from Sarah. Inside was a photo of a little boy on his first day of school, wearing a backpack almost as big as he was, and grinning with missing front teeth. On the back, Sarah had written, "Michael James Martinez, age 6, future police officer. He wants to help people just like his namesake. Thank you for showing us both what real heroes look like." Michael smiled as he placed the photo on his mantelpiece, next to pictures of his own children and grandchildren. Sometimes, he thought, the most important moments in life were the ones you never saw coming. The moments when you were just doing your job, just trying to help, just being human. Those were the moments that really mattered, the moments that reminded you why you were here and what you were meant to do with the precious gift of life. The story of Sarah and baby Michael had become part of his own story, woven into the fabric of his life in ways that would never be undone. And whenever he looked at that photo of the little boy with the bright smile and curious eyes, Michael was reminded that sometimes, on a rainy night when everything seems to be going wrong, angels appear in the most unexpected places, wearing the most ordinary faces, ready to help us find our way home.